Fear is a thief, and it wears a polite mask, a whisper of doubt that slides into your ear when the room is empty and the clock is ticking, as if the silence itself were a verdict against you. The first rule of seizing life is to refuse to treat fear as a barrier, and more as a signal to test, to measure, to prove. The one mental trick that demolishes fear is not fanning the flames of courage with pretty promises. It is converting fear into a controllable sequence of experiments where every variable is named, every outcome is observable, and every test is public enough to keep you honest with yourself. You become fearless, not by erasing fear, but by converting it into information that can be acted upon. Fear, when faced with the discipline of method, reveals its true face, a miscalculation of risk that dissolves under a ledger of small, undeniable proofs. Think of Edison, who did not wait for the spark of genius to strike. He cataloged failure the way a jeweler catalogs gems, each rejected filament a step closer to the one that would endure. Think of Carnegie, who did not chase influence with grand sermons, but with the patient currency of reciprocity, the steady accumulation of personal commitments that bound men to him with a chain of obligation and mutual gain. Think of Lincoln, who did not banish doubt with silken self-confidence, but fed it with writing, debate, and relentless revision until the idea he carried in his heart took the shape of a policy the nation could lean on. And think of Disney, who did not stand on a podium of inspiration alone, but walked the floor of possibility, testing each moment for how delight could be manufactured, then teaching it to others, so that delight multiplied. The modern version of this trick is no softer or simpler. It is sharper, more clinical, and more accessible to anyone who is willing to treat their life as a laboratory rather than a theater. Let us begin with the mind, because the mind is the first battlefield and the last refuge. The moment fear enters, the brain floods with stories of catastrophe and scarcity. Unless you seed the mind with a counter-program, a relentless everyday practice of defining and constraining your world by what you can prove tomorrow, not what you wish could be true today. Mindset is not a mood you flip on. It is a system you install. It begins with the decision to approach every day as if you are building something that will stand when you are gone. A beehive of activity where each cell has a purpose and each worker knows its job. This is not mere optimism. It is a strategic choice to align every intention with a measurable outcome, to translate desire into a plan that can be watched, tested, and iterated until it becomes inevitable. Then you move to belief, not as soft conviction, but as a scaffolding of assumptions that are continuously tested against the cold light of evidence. Belief in this framework is not a warm feeling you carry around in your chest. It is a hypothesis about the world that must survive the crucible of observation. You prove to yourself that what you believe you can do is not a fantasy, but a forecast with receipts. If belief cannot be demonstrated by a tangible action within a clearly defined time window, you revise the belief or you retire the action. No preening, no excuses, just the unvarnished verdict of results. From belief there emerges clarity. Clarity is not a sentimental sunrise. It is a single brutal instrument that slices through the fog of indecision. The most dangerous fog is the fog you mistake for depth, the sense that you are thinking deeply when you are merely stalling. Clarity demands a weapon, and the weapon is specificity. What exactly will you deliver by when, and in what form will the world interact with it? The beauty of clarity is that it does not chase inspiration. It latches onto a concrete target and begins to dismantle every barrier that can be used to delay. Then comes vision, not a hazy dream, but a skyline sketched in the mind and translated into a project plan that can be walked, not wished, into existence. Vision is not a momentary burst of awe. It is a deliberate architectural choice about what your life will add to the world. how your work will change the landscape of a field, and how you will measure whether you have contributed something worth remembering. And with vision in place, you arrive at purpose, the why that justifies the grind when the night is long and the page remains blank. Purpose is not a warm glow of motivation. It is a compass that points you toward a direction so compelling that it makes sacrifice rational and necessary. Discipline follows like gravity, the unseen but inexorable force that keeps you on course when the weather turns sour and the crowd disperses. Discipline is not punishment. It is the infrastructure of freedom, the guarantee that your most precious resource, time, will be spent on actions that yield verifiable returns. It is the habit of showing up at the exact hour when the world most wants to rest, of performing the smallest, most repeatable action that moves a project forward, of designing environments that convert intention into execution without mental negotiation. This is not a Spartan gospel. It is the practical physics of momentum. You do not wait for motivation to strike. You build a system that makes action the natural outcome of a well-constructed morning. And action, true action, has weight because it is not a spark. It is a steady flame. You do not throw a grand gesture of effort into the dark and hope for a miracle. You lay down a small, undeniable step every day, a step that can be photographed, time-stamped, and handed to the world as proof that you are in motion. Gratitude follows discipline like a quiet engine. Gratitude is not sentimentality, but strategic leverage, an attitude that multiplies goodwill by turning favors into reciprocal energy. When you publicly acknowledge mentors, allies, and those who offered you a lifeline in the early hours, you convert admiration into obligation and risk into alliance. The old masters knew this. They fed the network with genuine appreciation and offered value in exchange. If you want to move mountains, you must first mine the valley of human connection with care rather than force. Gratitude expands your circle of influence by proving you are not a taker of opportunities, but a nourisher of relationships. Someone who returns more than they receive, and who invites others to carry the work forward with you. Adaptability is the music of progress in a world where the tempo changes without warning. It is the willingness to alter a plan while preserving the core objective. The ability to pivot toward a new channel, audience, or method without surrendering the umbrella of your vision. Adaptability is not fickleness. It is the discipline of testing, learning, and rewriting the script in real time, with the audience watching and demanding results. You rehearse this art in private so you can perform it publicly when the pressure rises. Resilience then appears as a companion, a protocol for when the inevitable setback arrives. The moment your device fails, your pitch collapses, your partner steps away, or the world simply moves in a direction you did not foresee. Resilience is the conviction that a door that closes does not trap you. It points you to another hallway you had not noticed, another possibility you had not considered, another collaborator whose insight could transform the plan into a triumph you had not imagined. Learning breathes under pressure. It becomes a function of exposure rather than hours spent in a quiet room. The more you test yourself in the arena, the faster you learn to sift signal from noise, to separate the useful from the ornamental, to turn a misstep into a beacon that illuminates a better path. The greats, the Edisons who kept notebooks filled with failed experiments, the Carnegies who refined their craft of influence through relentless study of people, the Ford who imagined wheels turning in a factory as a single organism, all understood that learning is not a bookshelf sport, but a hand. On Enterprise, a dialogue with reality that rewards those who argue back with better questions and sharper actions. And so the one mental trick, when multiplied across every day, becomes a civilization within one life. It repurposes fear as fuel, transforms hesitation into a plan with a deadline, and fashions a climate in which doubt cannot thrive because the evidence is visible, undeniable, and shared. You are not chasing a fleeting mood. You are constructing a durable, luminous fortress from the simplest blocks. A single email sent, a page published, a test run recorded, a conversation documented, a public repair announced. The ledger grows not through dramatic acts, but through a dozen or 100 tiny, impeccable commitments that mathematicians would describe as compounding returns. One small, verifiable decision stacking into another, then another, until the horizon itself bends toward your will. In the theater of achievement, the loudest ovations belong to those who refuse the chair of fear and take the stage with a workman's hands, who do not conjure miracles but lay the bricks of inevitability one by one. The moment you decide to treat every day as a proving ground, fear loses its teeth, and the future becomes not a distant shore, but a city you already inhabit because you have built it with your own hands. And as you walk out of the dark into the glow of early triumphs, you will feel it. The quiet certainty that you have learned to live inside a discipline so precise, so relentless, that fear cannot find a place to stand, that doubt cannot assemble a committee to overrule your intention, that the dream you cradle will not vanish into the fog, but will stand as a testament to the power of method, to the stubborn, inexhaustible art of building. One proof at a time, fear is a stubborn guest. It will knock at the door again and again until you learn not to answer with excuses, but with evidence. The greatest truth of the mind's architecture is this: you do not conquer fear by pretending it isn't there. You anesthetize it with constancy, with a sequence of small, undeniable proofs that sit like stones on a path you cannot ignore. Once you learn to walk that path, fear becomes not a gatekeeper, but a door you've already learned to open. The trick is not to erase fear, but to strip it down to its component parts and rearrange those parts into a mechanism that serves you. You do not accuse fear of failing you. You audit its assumptions and replace them with data. Edison did not fear failure as a tyrant. He cataloged it. He learned from it. He filed it away as a necessary index in the ledger toward success. Carnegie did not fear the social weight of his ambitions. He measured reciprocity, built a system of relationships, and let the leverage of that system carry him forward. Ford did not fear the grind of repetitive labor. He designed processes that turned discipline into freedom, so that each morning you step into work not as a volunteer, but as a man who has already computed the cost of quitting and found it far too dear. The mind, when trained, becomes an instrument of relentless precision. It sorts signals from noise with the efficiency of a seasoned editor, who only keeps sentences that advance the plot. The first cut is the hardest. You are asked to trim away the sentimental, the easy glimmer of possibility, the path that would let you coast. You replace it with a single, unambiguous target and the concrete plan that makes that target inevitable. Think of the daily habit as a chamber of rehearsals. You rehearse the same motion until it becomes invisible to you, until the act of doing becomes the only possible way to act. This is not superstition. It is the physics of momentum. Momentum does not appear because you hope it will. It appears because you have engineered conditions that force you to move. A reliable morning rhythm, an environment calibrated to production, a ritual that requires no motivation, because motivation is the residue of a well-run system. You do not wait for the muse. You own the studio. Belief operates as a living, testing organism in this framework. It is not enough to say, "I believe I can." Belief must endure the scrutiny of time and the cold glare of measurement. You test it with a sequence of commitments that leave a visible imprint on the world. A page published, a page improved, a demo released, a client contacted, a promise fulfilled. Every commitment is a contract with the future you want to inhabit, and each contract that you keep tightens the fabric of belief until it is impossible to tear. The test is not a single drumbeat, but a chorus of small confirmations that accumulate until belief ceases to be a private whisper and becomes a public, kinetic force. In Lincoln's practice, Belief found its trunk in words on paper that transformed into policy and then into action. In Ford's world, belief found its limbs in the factory floor, where a single motion repeated day after day becomes a universal language of production. Your belief, too, must be demonstrated in a way that cannot be denied by a moment of doubt. Clarity is the scalpel that dismembers vagueness. The fog of indecision is heavy because it invites excuses to dangle like Christmas ornaments on a tired tree. But clarity does not celebrate the ornament. It removes the branch that holds it. Be merciless in defining the exact outcome you will deliver this week. This day, this hour. Do not mistake ambition for direction. Direction is a map with recognizable landmarks, a route you can trace with your own hands. When you articulate a request, you should be able to point to a piece of evidence that would verify you accomplished it. If you cannot provide the evidence, you have not yet defined the objective. Then you prune again until the objective is a single, compact thing. One outcome that would shift the narrative of your work. Vision follows not as a dream, but as a plan that anticipates how the future will look once that outcome is achieved. It is not a vague horizon. It is a skyline you can approach brick by brick. It is a ledger you can audit with your eyes, and purpose follows, not as a warm sentiment, but as the engine that compels you to sacrifice the easy for the necessary, the popular for the essential, the immediate for the enduring discipline. Again and again is the quiet force that makes all the other forces coherent. It is not a cruel master. It is a faithful ally who knows what must be done when others quit. You do not live in constant moments of revelation. You live in a sequence of micro-choices that stack up in favor of your future self. The first hour of the day is your kingdom, and you defend it with the same fervor a general defends a fort. You preempt distractions with design, a lamp dedicated to production, a chair that has learned your posture, a desk arranged so that your wrists, eyes, and breath fall into harmony. You program your mind to associate a particular spatial arrangement with focus, so that when you step into that space, your brain does not negotiate speed with fear, it honors momentum with action. The smallest units of discipline, 5 minutes of writing, 15 minutes of deep work, a single email sent, are the bricks that build a wall against the chaos of less significant days. You do not chase heroism. You cultivate a habit that refuses to tolerate non-performance. Action is the currency of conversion. Thought without action is a masquerade. Intention without delivery is a shrine to procrastination. And yet true action is not loud. It is precise. Edison did not conquer the universe with a single flash of brilliance. He chained 1,000 experiments into a single chain of demonstration that anyone could watch and learn from. When you act, you do so with the understanding that each gesture must be intelligible, measurable, and shareable. A single published page, a single test run, a single conversation that yields a new lead. These are not trivialities. They are the gravity that keeps the world of possibility from floating away into wishful thinking. There is a quiet courage in performing the boring, repeatable actions that deliver the reliable outcomes others only dream of. You will not appear heroic because you shouted a bold claim. You will appear fearless because you did what needed doing again and again, until the need stopped being a demand from the world and became a demand from your own character. Gratitude extends the reach of your effort. Gratitude is not a token exchanged in polite society. It is a strategic multiplier that converts appreciation into future leverage. When you publicly recognize someone who helped you, when you retell a story of a mentor's wisdom, you do not simply pay a debt. You authorize others to step forward as well. The creditor's patience is kindness made visible. The debtor's reciprocity becomes a new ally who will lend their strength when your supply lines run thin. Gratitude thus becomes a social dividend, a currency that compounds as your work compounds. You do not hoard it. You circulate it with discernment, offering value in return for opportunity, and watching opportunity return in turn. Adaptability is not surrender. It is acuity. The world is volatile, yes, but volatility can be converted into velocity with a cunning mind and a steady hand. You test new approaches, but you do not abandon your core. You iterate with discipline, always asking, does this move the needle on the objective, the metric, the proof? If the answer is yes, you pivot with intention. If not, you prune with equal resolve. The art of adaptability is the art of listening to the market while listening to your own heart. It is the practice of changing decks on a ship without changing the destination. Resilience arises when the ship shudders and the crew stays calm, when a plan collapses and a new plan rises from the ashes, when a door closes and you discover a corridor you had never known existed. It is not an emotional performance. It is a system of recovery, practiced, rehearsed, announced, and executed. Resilience is less about surviving fear than about converting fear's energy into momentum for the next act. Learning is not a solitary reading of old texts. It is a dialogue with reality, an ongoing conversation with feedback you cannot ignore. You learn by testing, by measuring, by exposing your ideas to the brutal light of scrutiny, and by teaching others what you have learned in the process. The greatest students are the greatest teachers because they translate theory into practice and practice into communal wisdom. The masters did not accumulate knowledge to wear it as a badge. They shared it because they understood that knowledge accelerates when it is public. This is your obligation as a learner, to publish your trials, to invite critique, to fuse critique into improved action. Then courage is not merely the absence of fear. It is the constant refinement of knowledge, a relentless sharpening of your craft, a perpetual expansion of your capacity to create what you once believed could only exist in imagination. The one mental trick, fear transformed into provable sequence. Fear dismantled by the architecture of method applies to every corner of life. It is not confined to the bedroom where you confront your morning doubts. It is the way you approach relationships, money, health, and influence. It becomes the standard by which you judge your days. Did I move the final needle? Did I produce something that bears the stamp of evidence and the weight of consequence? When this becomes your standard, fear loses its appetite, and you become the kind of person who does not beg for a chance, but earns one by building a life that makes the chance inevitable. The world will still pretend that luck is a more convenient explanation than work. It will offer you a shortcut, dressed as opportunity, a veneer of ease that betrays the effort behind it. You will see through it. You will choose the longer, wiser road, the road that carries you through the long night with the steady rhythm of a kettle singing, the road that ends not in a single triumph, but in a city you helped to erect with your own two hands, brick by deliberate brick. And when the dawn finally arrives, you will not be surprised. You will stand in the glow of proof after proof, the ledger thick with receipts that cannot be erased, a posture forged by discipline, a mind sharpened by learning, a heart tempered by gratitude. Fear will still knock, but you will answer with certainty, with the quiet force of a man who has learned to convert fear into a plan, doubt into data, hesitation into execution. You will understand that the real magic is not in a moment of inspiration, but in a lifetime of commitment, a method that converts every evening into a new morning, every setback into a set of steps, every quiet vow into a public victory that grows louder with each new proof. And as you walk forward, you will hear not a cry of triumph from the crowd, but a whisper from within that tells you, you have become the kind of person whose every action proves what the human spirit is capable of when guided by discipline, driven by purpose, and tested by the uncompromising truth of results. You will, in short, have earned a life that once lived only in the imagination, a life built, brick by brick, proof by proof, day after day, until the horizon itself becomes a monument to your unyielding will, to your relentless striving, to the enduring art of building, one resolute act at a time. The mind is a forge, and every fear is a raw ore you can smelt into something useful, a truth you can hammer into a tool, rather than a tyrant you must appease. If the last segment laid the ground, showing that fear can be reframed as a library of micro-proofs, this segment must build the roof, the walls, and the windows that let light in on your real capability. The psychology of success is not a magic spell, but a brutal arithmetic. Input equals output, and the quality of your inputs determines the brightness of your outputs. So you begin not with bravado, but with a prescription. Treat every day as a laboratory and every decision as a trial whose result must be visible and verifiable. The simplest way to start is with a map you can trust, a map etched not in wish but in action. The 1 week sprint, the 1 page plan, the 1 test you will run that will tell you if you're moving toward a tangible objective or merely circling in the fog. And when you say it with the confidence that comes from having already done it many times. Each repeat a notch in the bedrock of your certainty. Mindset, as Hill would insist, is the battery that powers belief, and belief is the scaffold that supports clarity, vision, and purpose in a storm. But belief is not a touchy-feely impulse you manufacture in a mood. It is a disciplined wager placed against uncertainty and settled by evidence. You push belief into the arena with a simple ritual. You commit to a measurable outcome on a fixed scale. You announce your intent with the clock as witness, and you deliver a public record that can be reviewed, criticized, and improved. When you see your name attached to a completed task, a real piece of work that someone else could use or judge, belief stops being a rumor you whisper to yourself and starts acting like a public authority, a claim backed by receipts. You do not force belief by sermon. You nourish it by creating conditions where belief is the only rational response to repeated proof. This is exactly the way Edison and Ford and Carnegie converted volatile conviction into durable data sets of achievement. Edison did not rely on a single moment of inspiration. He created a chain of experiments with a ledger that refused to let him pretend. Ford did not rely on a single flash of genius. He built an environment where the right move was the only move, because it was the easiest to repeat. Carnegie did not win hearts with promises alone. He won by designing conversations that accumulated trust and reciprocity until influence bent the world to his purpose. You can do the same. Test your beliefs with small public demonstrations, and let every tiny success be a brick in the wall you are building against your own doubt. Clarity follows belief like a blade follows light. If belief is the engine, clarity is the ignition switch. This is where most people derail. They carry a pocketful of dreams but ship nothing because they lack a crisp definition of what done looks like. So you lay it out with surgical precision. By Friday, what is the one thing that, if achieved, would pull the entire project toward a different future? And then you fragment that outcome into a cascade of micro milestones that can be checked off in a calendar, on a whiteboard, in a shared doc. Each micro milestone is a proof in disguise, a small hinge that rotates the door toward opportunity. Vision then takes the stage as a practical forecast rather than a distant star. Not a romantic longing, but a construct you can walk toward one corner of the skyline at a time. You outline the silhouette of the future, the city you'll inhabit because of the work you're doing today. And you convert that silhouette into a living blueprint, the channels you'll test, the audiences you'll reach, the metrics you'll push, the stories you'll tell to explain why this work matters. And beneath that blueprint lies purpose, an unyielding reason for every sacrifice, a North Star that makes the difficult choices obvious and the right choices irresistible. Purpose does not relieve you of pain. It reframes pain as a component of meaning, a price you gladly pay to secure something that outlives your current self. Discipline becomes the discipline of squeeze. You squeeze the day until only the essential remains, and every non-essential is squeezed out of sight. It is not a punitive regime designed to crush the will. It is a protective layer around your future. It preserves your energy for the exact moments you will need it most, when the room is quiet and the decision is heavy. The first hour becomes a fortress you guard with the same care a general guards a flank. No devices that distract, no tasks that do not advance the day's declared objective, no compromises that would soften the backbone of your work. This is the architecture of momentum, a rhythm that converts the ordinary into the inevitable. You do not wait for the mood to strike you. You manufacture the environment that compels you to act. The desk arrangement matters because it programs your nervous system to anticipate production, not drift into distraction. The lamp you switch on is not a mood light. It is a signal that the hour of truth has begun. The minute you begin against the inertia of yesterday, you discover that your mind follows your actions with a stubborn loyalty. It rarely offers to intention alone. Action is the lingua franca of progress. You will not progress by hoping. You progress by shipping, by releasing a test version, by presenting a version of your idea to the world that invites critique and collaboration. Edison's catalog of failures was not a national secret. It was a public demonstration of a method that works. Your action must be legible to others, reproducible by colleagues, and improvable by mentors. So you adopt a policy. Every action must be observable, reversible, and optimizable. If you cannot show a screen, a page, a prototype, or a conversation, you do not ship. If you cannot demonstrate the effect of your action within a week, you redesign the action so it can. This is not cold pragmatism. It is a moral discipline. Your commitment to the value your work promises the world, and you do not mistake speed for haste. You understand that speed without precision is noise that corrodes credibility. The fearless are those who move with intention at speed, who know when to push and when to pause, who trust the feedback loop so deeply that they act at the edge of what they know and learn at the edge of what they do not. The result is a sequence of tangible proofs that accumulate like frost on a window. You can look at your day and say, with confidence, that you did not merely endure time. You converted minutes into a lasting impression on reality. Gratitude emerges as your most powerful strategic instrument. It is not a courtesy. It is a lever that tilts opportunities in your favor. When you publicly thank those who helped you, you do more than acknowledge kindness. You insert your work into a wider network of trust, and you invite others to participate in the momentum you are building. Gratitude accelerates alignment. It makes mentors become co-pioneers, peers become sounding boards, clients become partners. The practice is simple. You name someone who moved your work forward. You highlight what they added. You return with something of value you can offer in return. The reciprocity you ignite becomes a renewable resource, a social capital that compounds in quiet ways until the day comes when you no longer beg for access. People offer it because they know you have already shown that you do not simply absorb help. You pass it forward with discipline. Adaptability is not a surrender to the wind. It is a precision instrument that helps you reframe the map while keeping sight of the destination. You test new routes in the margins. You abandon what the market rejects with gratitude. You plant seeds in multiple beds and water the ones that show life. It is the art of knowing when to cut losses and when to double down, of balancing stubbornness with flexibility, of recognizing when the core objective remains intact while the method to reach it changes, and resilience. Resilience as the stubborn pattern of return emerges from a repertoire of repair protocols you have rehearsed and shared. When things fall apart, you do not retreat. You expose what happened. You articulate what you will change. You publish the plan, and you mobilize allies to assist in the rebuilding. This public repair is not a confession of weakness. It is a demonstration of leadership. You will not pretend the storm didn't come. You will show how you steered through it, how you recalibrated, how you reclaimed momentum. Learning remains your perpetual edge. It is not about accumulating facts. It is about converting insight into action and action into influence. You learn by testing in public, by inviting critique, by adjusting your hypotheses in real time, by teaching what you have learned so others can compress the time you spent in the furnace of trial. The greats did not learn in isolation. They learned through a chorus of practice, feedback, and instruction. The more you share your trials, the rough drafts, the failed experiments, the revised strategies, the faster your craft grows, because knowledge ceases to live only inside you and becomes a shared engine that propels others as well. And as your learning accelerates, your influence deepens. You are not merely a person who claims results. You are a person who catalyzes a movement toward better performance in others. The one mental trick, when multiplied through every day, becomes a civilization inside one life, a culture of proof, a discipline of daily relevance, a relentless march toward what is possible, because you chose to test it, measure it, and show it again and again. You are not chasing luck or chasing an undefined glory. You are chasing the inevitable, the result of a mind trained to turn fear into format, doubt into data, and dream into deliverable. The world will throw glitter as a distraction and call it opportunity. You will evaluate with the sober scales of result. You will reject what cannot be tested, and you will invest in what demonstrably moves the needle. You will not be fooled by a single miracle or a single person's charisma. You will demand the ecosystem, the people, the process, the proof that makes success reproducible and scalable. In time, your life will resemble a ledger that cannot be faked, a fabric of routines that cannot be unwoven, an empire built of tiny stubborn bricks laid in daylight and verified by night. And when you finally stand before the horizon you once imagined, you will realize you did not conquer fear by tricking it or outrunning it. You conquered fear by turning it into the instrument with which you played the music of your own courage, by turning hesitation into a cadence, by turning complexity into order, by turning a life of potential into a history of undeniable outcomes. The journey continues not as a lonely ascent, but as a collective ascent. The shared work of everyone who ever believed that a single disciplined mind can redraw the map of what is possible, brick by deliberate brick, proof by proof, day after day, until the world itself bows to the structure you have built with your hands, your heart, and your unyielding will. The mind is a forge, and every fear is a raw ore you can smelt into something useful, a truth you can hammer into a tool, rather than a tyrant you must appease. If the last segment laid the ground, showing that fear can be reframed as a library of micro-proofs, this segment must build the roof, the walls, and the windows that let light in on your real capability. The psychology of success is not a magic spell, but a brutal arithmetic. Input equals output, and the quality of your inputs determines the brightness of your outputs. So you begin not with bravado, but with a prescription. Treat every day as a laboratory and every decision as a trial whose result must be visible and verifiable. The simplest way to start is with a map you can trust, a map etched not in wish but in action, the one week sprint, the one page plan, the one test you will run that will tell you if you're moving toward a tangible objective or merely circling in the fog. And when you say it with the confidence that comes from having already done it many times. At you the bedrock of your certainty. Mindset, as Hill, but belief is not a touchy-feely impulse you manufacture in a mood. It is a disciplined wager placed against uncertainty and settled by evidence. You push belief into the arena with a simple ritual. You commit to a measurable outcome on a fixed scale. You announce your intent with the clock as witness. And you deliver a public record that can be reviewed, criticized, and improved. When you see your name attached to a completed task, a real piece of work that someone else could use or judge. Belief stops being a rumor you whisper to yourself and starts acting like a public authority, a claim backed by receipts. You do not force belief by sermon. You nourish it by creating conditions where belief is the only rational response to repeated proof. This is exactly the way Edison and Ford and Carnegie converted volatile conviction into durable data sets of achievement. Edison did not rely on a single moment of inspiration. He created a chain of experiments with a ledger that refused to let him pretend. Ford did not rely on a single flash of genius. He built an environment where the right move was the only move because it was the easiest to repeat. Carnegie did not win hearts with promises alone. He won by designing conversations that accumulated trust and reciprocity until influence bent the world to his purpose. You can do the same. Test your beliefs with small public demonstrations, and let every tiny success be a brick in the wall you are building against your own doubt. Clarity, the scalpel that dismembers vagueness, is not a luxury but a work ethic. The fog you mistake for depth is a trap you set for yourself when you refuse to cut through with ruthless precision. If you do not define exactly what you will do, when you will do it, and in what measurable form the world will interact with it, you have already surrendered to delay dressed as contemplation. So the question becomes not what you want to achieve, but what you can demonstrate you have achieved by a fixed time. By Friday, you declare one deliverable so specific that a child could understand it, and you break that deliverable into the smallest, most controllable actions, 3 tasks, 4 decisions, 1 proof of concept that can be observed, shared, and criticized. Vision is not a poem. It is a plan you can walk through step by step with your hands as the primary tools and your eyes as the compass. You envision a future where your work has tangible shape in the world, where the market, the audience, and the peers you care about can walk up to the point you've reached and say, here is something real. The skyline you imagine becomes a blueprint you can navigate, a map you can test against reality, and beneath that blueprint lies purpose, the motive force that makes the mundane act of waking up in the morning sacred. Because you know what you are building is larger than your own comfort, that it carries a promise to people who need your craft, your discipline, and your stubborn hope. Discipline is the quiet architect of momentum, the unsung hero who makes sure the plan does not fade into a memory by noon. It is not about denying yourself pleasure. It is about arranging the day so that the essential is unavoidable, the urgent is manageable, and the trivial is vanishingly rare. The first hour of the day ceases to be a suggestion and becomes a ritual you rely on. The lamp lit, the seat found, the breath organized, the first action executed without debate. You set up your environment not to indulge your moods, but to compel your best self to appear. The desk is not a stage for sentiment. It is a machine for truth. The chair is not a throne for the ego. It is a seat of accountability. You strip away the friction that feeds procrastination, notifications silenced, to-do lists reduced to the few items that, if completed, would alter the course of the week, the month, the quarter. Each small, repeatable act, 1 page written, 1 paragraph revised, 1 email sent, builds a wall of credibility that fear cannot erode. The commitment to a morning routine is not a romantic gesture. It is a calculation that the cost of quitting grows with every unkept promise, and that the price of not finishing is paid in the currency of future opportunity you cannot conjure back. Action then becomes the only language fear understands. It is not drama, it is a craft. Each action must be visible to the eyes of the market you seek to serve. Each action must be reversible enough to learn from. And each action must be improvable by the feedback you collect. Edison's long ledger of trials was not a private diary. It was a public demonstration that there is a method to turning uncertainty into certainty, a method others could observe, emulate, accelerate, and support. Therefore, your action is not a heroic leap. It is a sequence of small public steps that accumulate weight, steps that invite critique and collaboration, steps that invite the world to test your results and refine your approach alongside you. You do not mistake velocity for virtue. You move with speed when the path is clear, and you pause with precision when the data demands it, because you know that every decision left untested is a door left ajar for doubt to slip through. What you ship is not a dream you whisper to a sleeping audience. It is a test, a demonstration, a legible artifact that proves your theory of progress is not a fantasy but a system. Gratitude then becomes your lever, your quiet confrontation of scarcity with abundance. It is not a performance of politeness, but a deliberate cultivation of alliance. You publicly acknowledge the minds that helped you, the hands that guided you, the voices that sharpened your thinking, and you repay with something of value: an introduction, a collaboration, a share, a skill offered. Gratitude is not weakness. It is the most efficient amplifier of leverage. The world responds not to loud claims, but to pattern. A person who keeps returning favors, who forges new bonds while delivering consistent results, who demonstrates that success is not solo, but a chorus of many hands working toward a common horizon. In this way, gratitude expands your reach without eroding your independence. It widens your orbit while keeping your center intact. Adaptability is the art of surviving the storm while steering toward the storm's eye. It is not a surrender to chaos, but a discipline of weather, reading, of testing multiple routes, of keeping your core objective intact while you experiment with new channels, audiences, and tools. The market will mislead you with shiny detours. Your job is to stay anchored to the objective while you ride currents, never abandoning the ship of meaning you have constructed. Resilience is the companion of that adaptability, an immune system for the soul that knows how to repair what breaks, to publish the plan for repair, to mobilize the community to help, and to emerge not crushed but hardened, with a more refined instrument for the next journey. It is a discipline of transparency. You name what failed, you name what you will alter, you publish the steps you will take, you invite others to hold you to your word. That is not humiliation. It is leadership. Because leadership is measured not by how you avoid cracks, but by how you repair them in front of an audience that trusts you to guide them through uncertainty. Learning remains the inexhaustible engine. It is not a collection of lectures or a shelf of books. It is a hands on dialogue with reality, a continual exchange that forces you to translate theory into practice, practice into teaching, and teaching into a broader liberation for others who crave a map through their own fog. You learn not merely to know, but to reveal, not merely to succeed, but to share the means by which success becomes accessible to the many who watch and wait. The masters did not hoard wisdom for private revelry. They exported a method that could be adopted and improved by anyone who dared to test themselves. So you publish your experiments in the public arena, invite critique, synthesize the critique into action, and then teach others what you learned, so they can compress their trials into fewer seasons. This is how a mind becomes not a mere instrument of personal ascent, but a node in a network of collective ascent, a chain that transforms a single life into a movement of many, a single discipline into a culture of relentless improvement. And so the journey does not end with a single victory, but with a living, expanding city you have built in your own image, a city of measurable outcomes, of proofs that speak louder than slogans, of a people inspired not by your charisma, but by the undeniable logic of your craft. The trick was never a radical gesture. It was a reliable system that converts fear into format, hesitation into cadence, complexity into order, and potential into actualized reality. You learn to love the grind, not as punishment, but as privilege, to respect the clock, not as a jailer, but as a faithful metronome, to greet each morning as a fresh page on which you inscribe your refusal to quit, your stubborn pledge to test, your unyielding promise to improve. And when future doors open, you will not walk through them with starry eyes and empty hands. You will stride with a ledger in your pocket, receipts in your mind, and a crew of allies behind you who wore your discipline as a shared badge. You will know that there is no shortcut, only a staircase, one step, then another, until the horizon does not loom, but arrives, because you have invited it into the scope of your daily, unyielding work. The one mental trick remains your anchor and your weapon, a compass and a crowbar, a quiet revolution inside the ordinary, turning fear into method, dusk into daylight, and the possible into the inevitable.